A brand new action car chase musical thriller mashup from the director of Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, his first film in 4 years. Here's my review of the highly anticipated Baby Driver. Baby is a young man with tinnitus who is coerced by a mob boss into being a getaway driver. Baby is a great driver, but being a criminal doesn't sit well with him, and when he falls in love, it's time to get out. But he's forced into one final job where everything goes wrong. Edgar Wright is a great director. His films are very identifiable. They're these highly controlled confection mashups of different genres. He shows a lot of love for the audience and tries to give them as much as he can and really plays along with them, while also showing lots of knowledge about film and about film techniques, not just the history, but how to actually make a good movie. In and amongst that, he actually tells an interesting story with characters in all of his movies as well. Not only that, but I feel a sort of personal bond with his films because when I was a kid and just starting to think about getting into film and being a filmmaker was also the time when Shaun of the Dead came out and he burst onto the British film scene and eventually the international scene as well. You know, Shaun of the Dead is such a solid film that has so many opportunities to pay homage to all sorts of great horror movies, but at the same time carries on being its own film in its own right. So when he got kicked off Ant-Man, I was bitterly disappointed, and it was really sad to go and see that film and see all of the touches that obviously showed him in them but weren't directed by him in the final product. So sitting down to watch Baby Driver, I won't lie, my expectations were very high indeed. The good news is the film is fantastic. Like all of Edgar Wright's movies, the film is very hard to put in a box. I feel like it's basically a car chase movie mixed with a musical. It also has strong thriller elements in it and a big romantic subplot as well. There's also a lot of comedy in it, although maybe less than you're used to with the average Edgar Wright movie. Now, the whole central device of the film is that Baby has to listen to music to drown out the ringing in his ears, and he does this whenever he's on a job and pretty much all the time in the whole film. Almost every scene has a pop song or a rock song playing underneath it, and the action, the shots, and even the sound effects are often synchronized across with that. That plays massively into Wright's strengths as a director because he's so strong in terms of how he approaches the edit. He's famous for his quick cuts and stuff like that, but here I think there's another level of playfulness in it, and this is why I want to consider the movie as almost being a musical. He's not just using the music as a backing track, but using it as a way of getting into the head of Baby, who's this kind of like amped up, crazy driver character. Every scene hums along at a set of beats per minute, and it really gives a rhythm to the film that's just impossible to get away from. That might feel grating to some people, and I can imagine why watching it you might feel like it's occasionally just a set of music videos mashed together. But I think the movie by and large gets away from that by having such a strong set of characters weave in and out of it. Kevin Spacey plays a mob boss. He's this terrifying, nasty dude. Jamie Foxx puts in a stellar performance as the kind of crazy one on the heist Bats. And Ansel Elgort is really good as Baby. You know, he's a quiet character, so it's a little bit hard to play, but he does a fantastic Kubrick stare, and he does a lot of physical work that really makes him feel lively as a character. The majority of my praise is for Jon Hamm, who has probably the most dynamic character in the whole film. He plays a guy called Buddy, who's one of the robbers on the very first robbery in the opening sequence, and then eventually comes on in a later heist with Baby as well. I don't want to get into spoilers with it, so I'll keep it vague, but Hamm has so much to do in the film that he basically shines in every scene that he's in. Not only that, but he gets to take a character who initially looks like he'll be quite, low level and not that complex, and slowly build him throughout the movie. I mean, you gotta love that. Jon Hamm is ultimately a comedy actor who is most well known for a dramatic role in Mad Men. So it's nice to see a film where he really gets to mix the two together, because it's not that often that he does. As far as directing is concerned, I think the film is one of the best out this year, and probably one of the best car movies I've ever seen. Over the whole of June, Edgar Wright has been running a program called Car Land at the BFI, which is basically a set of films, all car chase movies pretty much, that he selected that he feels like influenced Baby Driver. So he's very much putting it in that kind of genre. And so away from the kind of musical aspects of the film, we can also just look at it as being an action car chase movie. And on those auspices, I think it's one of the best examples of the genre. The opening sequence of the film is an astonishingly good car chase. It's obvious right off the bat that there is no CGI in these chases, that they are all practical cars actually driving and doing the stunts that are shown. I get why some movies have to use CGI to make massive set pieces work, and I think it can be okay. But with a car chase movie, what you really want is that visceral kind of crash bang wallop. You want to see that physically happening on screen. There's a sort of sense of illicit thrill watching physical, actual humans break the rules so severely. And everything in this movie, right from the intensity of the chases through to some of the graininess in the image occasionally, and definitely the dialogue, which is very pulpy, points to this being almost a pastiche of those 70s car chase movies like Vanishing Point. These relatively low budget 70s and 80s action films where the car and the driving are really the hero of the film. So you get these astonishing car chases and these action sequences, and then you fit them with this kind of musical aspect where Wright is often syncing stuff like tires squealing and guns firing to the beats of the songs. And he's not choosing obvious songs as well. Some of them are actually relatively obscure. I saw that they played Radar Love in the trailer, which is an amazing car chase kind of song, but has been used a lot for that context before. And that actually doesn't show up in the film. So there's a lot of really interesting selections there. And I feel like it's going to inform my Spotify playlist for a couple of years to come. I feel like audiences are going to have one or two relatively standard problems with this film. Now, the first one is that it doesn't feel like Wright's other movies. And I think that's true to some extent. This is his first movie set in the US. It's not an out-and-out comedy, so already it's quite far away from his other stuff. But also we're seeing him develop as a director. I mean, it's been 4 years since his last movie. What do you think he's been doing? So a lot of those things that we associate with Edgar Wright, those ultra-quick kind of zoom cuts, aren't actually in the film that much. There's one really prominent one right near the end, which I loved. But then there is a really long shot when a guy walks to the shops and back. So that's a kind of Cornetto trilogy staple, almost. If you have that problem with the film, that you're watching it change from the rest of his movies, then you kind of have to take a step back and just watch the film for itself instead of seeing it as an Edgar Wright movie, because it is an excellent film and also it develops his directing style. It's sort of the same problem that Interstellar had when it first came out, where people who'd been fans of Nolan for forever, like me, had a little bit of a bad reaction to it because it wasn't like a lot of his other movies. It was sort of slower, it had a different sort of scope to it. Now that we've seen the trailer to Dunkirk, we can see that's really where Nolan is going as a director, and I think that's something we have to allow creatives to do. The other problem with the movie is the love story that is the middle of it. This is between Baby and a waitress who works in a local diner called Deborah. Wright is full of these visual tricks, and he does really interesting stuff with like foreshadowing in his writing, and he's got a lot of puns and things like that. And he knows his pop culture back to front. But I think if you're going to have a reasonable critique of him, you might say that the emotion in his films can sometimes feel a little artificial. I feel like he's been lucky having really good actors like Simon Pegg and Nick Frost pull out those elements. And I think it'd be unfair to say that he doesn't know how to deal with emotion once it's there in the performances. The ending of Shaun of the Dead almost always gives me a little tear in my eye because it's just really well observed and well carried out, especially in the context of an otherwise quite stupid film. With Scott Pilgrim, he also gets away with it because there's this kind of deadpanness to the whole tone of the movie, and it fit perfectly into this mumblecore kind of thing that they're semi-parodying in that film. With Baby Driver, because it's so pulpy, and I think because the two actors playing the love interests are relatively new, it doesn't quite land in the same way that you would want it to. And those emotional scenes can actually slightly drag. I mean, they are literally the slowest scenes in the film because they're pretty much the only ones where someone isn't driving or planning a crime. It's not a be-all and end-all for me. I feel like the film covers its bases as a musical and as an action thriller so well that I don't really need that plotline to work too well. And the other thing that helps is that Baby has another person in his life who also gives depth to the character, who is an old hearing impaired guy who's his foster father. Those scenes work really well, and they give you enough motivation for Baby to not worry too much about the love story. And it's not terrible, the love story as well. I just feel like it's not up to the same level of polish as the rest of the film. So, Edgar Wright's first film in 4 years, his take on the American classic car chase movie, and it is a smash hit. Go and see it in the cinemas, you'll have a fantastic time. If you've got something you want to say about Baby Driver, if you didn't enjoy it as much as me, or if you felt that the love story really pulled at your heartstrings, let me know in the comments down below. And don't forget to click like and subscribe to get the next video when it comes out. I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Bye for now.